Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Meeting Your Soul podcast. I'm Farah, your host, and today on the pod we have Ronnie, and I am so excited for you to be here. Ronnie is actually a school counselor over in Korea, and he is doing such many things, and he has traveled all around the world. And so we're hoping to be able to talk a little bit more about his journeys and how that's really shaped who he is as a person and how he shows up in the world, and just kind of taking that approach of being able to look at someone's perspective from their other shoes. And I think that that's really valuable in all facets of life. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for the serious comment of I should join this podcast that I wasn't sure if it was serious. And here we are. So this is going to be exciting. It's going to be a fun new thing.
1 week later. So you're on the pod. Thank you. I do. I love to have different people because I think everyone has their own unique story. And that's like a part of why I created the pod, is to be able to share that. And I think each person is comprised of different memories and experiences. And it's like having more insight into that, I think kind of recognizes the similarities as well as the differences in the human experience. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that you're doing this. We've known each other for quite a while, and I've been following along
Yeah.
with you the changes, and it's always fun to I think all the problems I have with social media, one of the amazing things is that
Mm.
all of these friends and people that I've met, from my early 20s, and now seeing them as these more fully formed adults and these
Yeah.
projects and ideas and getting to, see what you're doing, it's been really cool.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Yes. And so I didn't mention this, but Ronnie and I met in our early 20s, living in Seattle, doing the damn thing, having a great time though, having an amazing time. I always would find ourselves in Ballard at some place. I have a feeling.
Yeah, I
Trying to
remember a
think.
couple of Revolution concerts.
Oh
Uh,
yes, of course.
yeah.
I know, different. I think that's the part of the beauty of like growing up with people, though, is that you get to see them in these different like areas and different forms of who they are, and like that's still very much. I was like a lifetime ago, but I was like I would still go to a Revolution concert today and like have a great time. So it's really still me.
Yeah, I would for sure go. I would just hope that the end of my night would be a lot better than it was back then.
Whatever do you mean, Ronnie? I don't know.
I try to drink more water these days.
Well, and that's the thing. Like we would, but you know what I would have to say for our group of friends, and even still now to this day, is like always good vibes. Like lots of
Hmm.
laughing, always a little bit of mischief, but like nothing too crazy. And everyone was always in good spirits. And I think that that's all you can really hope for within a friend group, especially within your 20s, and just like going out and like living life. So
Yeah, that group particularly really like is there's like a very clear in my head this like start and end for me for my like part in that group. And it's such like a
yeah,
little time capsule into like what was happening in my life. But
yeah.
it was, I mean, I was seeing you guys, that whole group, every week, which was
Hmm.
really fun. And so like a lot of really core memories from that time.
Yeah, I know. It was well, and that was so Ronnie, the full disclosure, Ronnie and I met through my ex's one of his best friends from college. And so I used to hang out with that crew, and we were together for over 10 years. So like I used to go out, but I was always the little fly on the wall. I was like probably the one girl that was like consistently there because I was dating one of them. And then I just got to see all the shenanigans, which was always hilarious. And but not also never always in like the peripheral. So like it was never fully participating. But you guys used to I was gonna say this would seem so inappropriate. Phoebe, you are a gem, and I haven't met you yet, but I love you. But you guys used to slay the ladies. There was always a rotation of ladies coming through.
I think that was Dan. I'm gonna say Dan was the ladies' man. He was the most
Oh man,
charismatic, one of the most charismatic people I think I've ever met. But
I
yeah, love to a
know.
party. It's the sort of person that draws people in, which was the reason
Mhm.
that I started hanging out with him as well.
Yeah, I know he is. He's a good time. But I know he was actually in our wedding. But long story short, back to Ronnie and why we're here today. But yeah, so then there was like this time period where, yeah, I was seeing you all the time, and then you kind of took off and kind of like went around the world to a certain extent. Have you actually gone like in a way, like fully around the world into different countries, like spotted around?
Yeah, so I was I figured you'd ask that question. So I actually like
That's I
got
did
out a
not even
piece
think about it until this moment. Just
I got out a piece of paper and I was like, all right, I gotta like try to remember the places that I've been. So I think it's
yeah.
39 countries now
Wow.
I've traveled to.
Yeah.
I've not been to Antarctica. Otherwise I've been to
Mhm.
all the other continents, but I'd love to go to
Yeah.
Antarctica. It's just you can only get there by boat and I get so seasick.
Oh, that's like just the practicality of it. You're like, I just don't want to do it.
Yeah, it's just
What do you do in
miserable.
Antarctica? Yeah, I know. I was like, do you just like I know, I was like, what's like the draw of it, if you will?
I mean, I think the fact that it's so hard to get to and so few people have. There's also
Mm-hmm.
the kind of like the isolation piece. But then
Mm.
my father-in-law and brother-in-law have both been there.
Oh,
And
okay.
so seeing like the photos and videos, like it does look pretty cool. It would be a fun experience, but not on the short bucket list at the moment.
No. Well, and it'll be something you never forget. And there's much more time in life to live. So there's an opportunity you might be able to make it later on too. So what inspired you? Have you always been one to love to travel? Is that always just kind of, have you always had that bug, or
No,
what
not at
sparked it?
all. I had a pretty like white America upbringing and existence. And I mean, there were like, we'd do trips to Mexico, and I did like a senior trip to Europe, and things like that. But travel wasn't a big part of my life.
Mhm.
Funnily enough, it was Evan, um,
Oh,
my
really?
my cousin, who during that time, which we were talking about
Mm-hmm.
earlier, which was a lot of fun, but not exactly a great time for me, kind of like personally, just
Mm-hmm.
with all the change that was happening. And it was Evan, who had sent me a Facebook message one day, and he was like, "Hey, cuz, why don't you come hang out with me? I'm down in Nicaragua. I'm surfing. Why don't
Yeah.
you head down here?" And it was just one of those things. It was the right message at the right time, and
Mm-hmm.
I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah, why don't I?" Um,
Wow.
and so I think it was probably like 5 weeks after that, I was on a plane
Mm-hmm. No
down
way.
to see him, which didn't happen, which
Yeah,
is
I was just
a
thinking
whole,
about that.
a whole different story. But I mean that one message definitely set my life on a different path.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was there. I was in Costa Rica and by myself and scared, and was pretty unsure
Wow.
about the decisions that had led me there. And
Yeah.
um, let's then started to kind of find an appreciation for
Mhm.
that experience. So
Yeah.
the people that I started to meet,
Mhm.
and a lot of the things that I was able to kind of let go of, what I had been doing and what I've been focused on back
Mhm.
in Washington, really
Yeah.
that like, I think took root in what I was kind of searching for after that trip. It's not one
Yeah.
of those things where I came back and like, oh, I'm a new person, but I think there was definitely
Mhm.
now a very specific pull that I started to have in kind of the choices I made as I
Mhm.
started thinking about what the rest of my life would look like.
Yeah. Well, and Costa Rica, I think, is a good introduction to travel within South America, because I think the people and the culture are very welcoming for the most part. Or at least that's what I experienced when I was there. And it's also, I think it gets the fear of like going to another country where you don't necessarily speak the language or know anyone, especially alone. Like that's a bold move. I've not gone to another country not to another country. I've traveled quite a bit, doing solo trips recently. But it was a huge fear I had to get over before even kind of going down that road. So it's kind of sounds like you kind of got pulled into it, and then after that, maybe even got like familiar with the process, so it didn't seem as intimidating.
Well, it was still scary, and I mean, being alone and talking to strangers is always going to be somewhat intimidating,
Yeah.
but it was a
Yeah.
real blessing that you know, not for Evan necessarily, although I think he would say that
No. Yeah.
it worked out well for him in the end. But um, had I gone down there and met him, I would have definitely followed along with him and met the people he'd been hanging out
That's true.
with.
Hmm.
Whereas what ended up happening was I was kind of faced with, okay, I got to make friends or I'm just going to sit here by myself.
Which,
And
yeah, what's the
so
point then? Yeah.
right. And so it forced me to start having conversations and just walking up to people and sitting down with them and saying, hey, how's it going? Where are you from?
Hmm.
And then you start to, you meet some amazing people and you hear these stories. And so it kind of becomes addicting. And like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's still like there's that trepidation and that kind of anxiety about it. But then
Yeah.
like you see what happens on the other side of those kind of new relationships. And I think
Hmm.
especially in these vulnerable situations like traveling,
Mm.
the relationships happen fast, right? Have these
True.
like fast
Hmm.
relationships where you kind of jump in and you don't have any kind of history with people. So that
Hmm.
part was really exciting.
Yeah, it's like a fresh slate. And I think some of my favorite travel trips have been me randomly. And I feel like it's always usually when I'm on my own, because I think when you're with other people, you just tend to stick with whatever group you're with.
Of
But when
course.
you're alone, it's like, well, I got like either I'm going to be doing nothing or I'm just going to like chat with somebody. And I think I at least think that it's really an invitation to listen to your intuitions, like understanding the little spidey senses, seeing where you naturally get drawn into going. And then from there, it's like, there's no expectation, right? I think then that all goes out the window, which I think there's a freedom to that too.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Where would you say has probably been, or is there a place that you can say that's probably had the biggest impact on you?
Oh man. Um, hmm. I don't know if there's like a singular place that's
Mhm.
had like the biggest. You know what? I would say probably when we moved to Saudi Arabia. That's probably had the biggest impact
Mhm. Mhm.
for a number of reasons, right? I don't think it's just the place. I think, so me and my wife, we got jobs at an international school there in Riyadh. And so that
Mhm.
was God, how long ago was that now? 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that probably has had the biggest impact on our lives
Mhm.
in that like the culture in the Middle East, meeting students and people from such backgrounds that were very much like growing up, like something I didn't engage with at all. The idea of a Muslim
Yeah.
culture, very much like the
Mhm.
other. And
Yeah.
so I think that was probably the biggest shift in like being in a culture that was really, really unfamiliar. But
Mhm.
then as well as like the work, working with the students there, the people that we met, I think
Mhm.
really kind of cemented this idea of this, living internationally. And I don't know, if we'll ever live in either one of our homes again, which is the US for me and Australia for her. And this
Yeah.
idea that we'll kind of continue to make new communities in different parts of the world. Again, just one of those things that was really scary at the beginning, but then like, oh, this is seeing the other side of that kind of fear,
Mhm.
all the things that it opened up.
Yeah. Which is kind of incredible to hear that you've done it multiple times, that you continue and that you continue to seek it out. I think sometimes people are like, well, I do this, it's scary, but like, I'll never do it again kind of thing. And you're like, no, we made it through. And now like, I want to see what else I can do, how else I can push my boundaries, which I think just shows a growth mindset in general and kind of just like who you are as a person. So, but like Saudi Arabia, like that is, and do I dare say like when we were growing up that Muslim culture in general was kind of villainized to a certain extent. And so for like to be able to go there and to just be able to be a part of that, like how did that open up your world? How did that change your perspective?
I think it's very much that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
um the the lens that we view the world is all from our own experiences, right? It's what we've been
Mm-hmm.
exposed to, and um, I look back at the way that I saw the world and would think about the world, in my teens and early 20s, and on one side there's
Mm,
like some shame about that, but on the other side there's like some forgiveness because I understand that like what
totally.
opportunities there were to
Mm-hmm.
experience different cultures and ideas and beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been part of this like kind of evolution to trying to be more open-minded and continue to like try new things in new places.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I'm always a little like cognizant of the fact that, you know, routines are really easy, and it's easy to
Mm-hmm.
get comfortable in places, but that's not always the best for me, I think, personally. I think
Mm-hmm.
that change sometimes is a good opportunity for reflection and some kind of purposeful
True.
changes that I can make in my life versus the kind of path
Mm-hmm.
of least resistance, which tends to happen with me when I kind of start to feel settled in a place.
Yeah, it's like, and this sounds negative, but I think that there can be a comfortable complacency to it. The like you just get in that
100%.
routine. It's like, but then to reevaluate, to even just like be prompted to reevaluate how you're approaching something can be an invitation to be able to, you know, up level in some way, in whatever way is life's presenting itself at that time.
Yeah, it's a real like forced reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
again, like
definitely.
I think my kind of base instinct is to be lazy. I know that about myself. That's it's way more enjoyable. But having
Yeah.
these things that push me and force me to do these work, right? It's getting
Mm-hmm.
back to that first traveling into Costa Rica where it's like I'd way rather just sit on the beach with my cousin and talk about, you know, things that we grew up with and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
old history.
Nostalgic.
But that's
Yeah.
not necessarily good for my like evolution as a human. And so
Mm-hmm.
having these moments that kind of force me to like, okay, I've got to make some like very purposeful choices and I've got to think about
Mm-hmm.
the next steps is healthy for me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and we were kind of talking about how like public speaking might not be one of your favorite things, and maybe, but you do seem very social. So I'm like, and maybe when we met, and it maybe it was just the environment, but I felt like we were just like a really kind of outgoing group. But do you like how did you bridge this gap of communication with new people and like kind of making these connections when you're out and traveling and going to new places? Because I think that's like more intimidating than most things for most people.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just like white knuckling it, right? Like sometimes you just don't have an option. I so before like so in my early 20s, I worked in outside sales.
Mm-hmm.
And that job, there were a lot of skills that I learned in that job, you know, in
Mm-hmm.
face-to-face sales that
Yeah.
have really helped me along the way. So the ability to kind of like have an inner monologue
Mm-hmm.
going and kind of breathing through, like pushing down some of
Mm,
that, like that insecurity that's always happening, right? You got the little like
yeah.
um,
Mhm.
dickhead's, you know, internal monologue who's just being a bully to yourself. You know, I
Mhm.
definitely had to learn how to like quiet that voice.
Mhm.
And so it's a lot of that, right? It's just a lot of kind of understanding that some of those things, that fear isn't real. And then when I went into
Yeah.
my graduate to grad school for counseling, there was a lot of
Mhm.
like psychological techniques that I started to learn that can
Mhm.
help others that I work with, but certainly help myself as well.
Yeah. What are a few techniques, if you will? Sorry, but I didn't mean to talk about this, but we're here, so let's
Yeah,
roll with
no,
it.
like so I'm a big cognitive behavioral techniques
Mhm.
counselor. So right, so I do a
Yeah.
lot of CBT work, especially with the students.
Mhm.
But a lot of that
Yeah.
is also just it's reinforcing those things within myself, right? And so
Mhm.
trying
Mhm.
to understand, is it what I'm thinking that's giving causing me fear? Is there some sort of feeling? Is there something I'm doing? Right. So just trying to
Mhm.
like pause to first understand what's happening. And
Yeah. The
then
trigger.
secondly,
Mhm.
yeah. And then secondly, kind of tapping into the logical side, right? Like using that information store that I have to, okay, this is happening. It's probably because of this. And so what are the things that I know that will work for me to start to combat that? And knowing that it's not like
Mhm.
flicking a light switch, but I can start to, you know, so public speaking, for example, I
Mhm.
know that that fear is like an insecurity that I'm going to sound like an idiot, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so then it's like, okay, I know where that's coming from. What I need to do is remember that the things that I'm saying like are things that I know about, right? I'm
Yeah.
familiar with the topic.
I'm speaking on this for a reason. Mhm.
Yeah, I've done this before. It's fine. It might be a little uncomfortable, and all of that like doesn't make it all of a sudden, ooh, I'm excited, let's go do this. But
Mhm.
it lessens that like pressure that I'm starting to feel, and makes it
Mhm.
just manageable.
Yeah, I was gonna say it makes it more manageable so you can actually get through it. And I think then once you get out of your head a little bit, then you're able to just lean into the flow, and then it becomes more of an easeful experience. But really with anything in life, I think that there's an opportunity to kind of tap into that if you're willing to be conscious of it and aware of it, and then like kind of like almost what's the word, invite it in. No, I'm thinking of like harness it, like harness that flow.
Yeah. You've got to train yourself, right? Because
Yes,
otherwise,
exactly.
if you just feel it and it can become overwhelming, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like having your body kind of brain wired so that it's like, okay, what is this that I'm feeling? Where is it coming from? And
Mm-hmm.
then experiencing it. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Like whatever that is,
Mm-hmm.
the fear, the worry, the sadness, like you can feel it, but understanding where it comes from is the part that can mitigate
Yeah.
it from all of a sudden taking over.
That's the part, is because it can get really easy to like get distracted or like get pulled into it, and then you start spiraling and the storyline and then like the fears, and then it's just like it becomes like almost like a storm within your mind, and then that's what takes you out completely, and that's when it becomes paralyzing, I think, for a lot of people in those moments too.
Our minds are really mean sometimes, and it tricks us
Mm-hmm.
into thinking that, oh, this is how it's always going to be now. We're never going to feel whatever it was that we felt before. This
Mm-hmm.
is going to keep getting worse. And then
Yeah.
those thoughts, which aren't helpful at all, just make compound it. They
Wow.
make it worse.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think then there's an opportunity for us to either change the behavior. Or like I love cognitive behavioral therapy. It's one of my, I feel like it's one of the most effective techniques too. But like
It's
you have
it's
a choice.
so
It's so like it's so like it's like simple and to the point in a way, and it's like this is, replace this with this. But I used to work for 1-800 quit now, so I used to be a cognitive behavioral therapist for
yeah.
addiction in particular, and so which is very like simplified, but it was something that I just never really heard of it and been introduced to it with my psychology background. So then to be able to like apply it into my own life, I was like, oh, I get this. It's like very easy for me to be able to recreate this and like talk about it. Don't mind Isabella. Are you getting a little scared? She's watching The Nightmare Before Christmas, and she's like, Mom, it's scary. It's scary now. She doesn't normally watch scary movies. So this was a special treat because it's Halloween. But anyhow, so I digress. We'll come back in. But I think there is this opportunity for us that once you become aware of something, though, I think the first step is awareness. Once you become aware of something, then you have the opportunity to change the behavior if you want to. If you're like, I don't want to necessarily, I want to be able to do this, I want to learn from this, I want to grow, then like sometimes the only way to do is just to do it, and then give yourself a couple tools to be able to handle whatever comes up, whatever comes to the surface.
Yeah. I think it's funny, right? You were saying that when you first learn about it, it seems so simple, like almost too simple. I
Mm-hmm.
know I talk to my students a lot about different cognitive behavioral techniques, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I sometimes have to be aware that like I know that this probably seems like I'm just like making something up, and there's no way that that will work, but it will. Like
Yeah,
this isn't me
like, but
making it up. This
really,
is science. This is like try it. It will work.
yeah. And once they see the results of it, I think then but it builds confidence too,
Yeah.
like you see the results, you recognize the change, and you're like, oh, I can do this. And I think then that's what then evolves and changes. And then you're like, oh, and then if I can apply it to this, then I could probably apply it to these things too, and then see the benefits from it. But
The the
yeah,
key
go
is the
ahead.
first time, right? Like if you can do something once,
Mm-hmm.
you can do it twice, and if you can do it twice, you can do it 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
it's just the like, and then that becomes like it reinforces it in your brain. Like I've done this before, I can handle that, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that is like one of overcoming like the fear and of the risk of it. Like when something feels kind of risky, I think that that's what, when fear takes hold, and it almost deters us from moving forward. But it's like if you lean into the fear and like almost have some type of like, some like some things in your arsenal, it's like I can do this if I just like listen to myself and believe in myself, and also use the techniques that I know I've already learned and integrated into my life. Mindfulness, that's why mindfulness took me on such a different turn, because I recognized the power of my thoughts and the fact that I was actually in control of my mind. And I was like, oh, I can slow this down. I can like be present. I can actually stop like psyching myself out of it. And then once I started doing that, I was like, oh, like this is like the world's my, like I have, there's life is limitless if I choose. Like I'm the only person that can actually put a ceiling on what I can accomplish.
There's it's such a blessing that I get to do this work with students because it's
Mhm,
again good reminders for myself as well. I did a mindfulness activity with I think it was my juniors, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. And just
mhm,
like a little, we did like a little kind of like awareness activity,
mhm,
can you be aware of your foot, of your left knee, of your ear? Can you
mhm,
like block
mhm.
out all those intrusive thoughts?
Yeah,
And I just, every time I do it, I've done it every year that I've been in Korea, and every year we go through
yeah,
it. And the whole time I'm like, God, I'm so bad at this. I need to do better. Like, it's a good reminder for me of like how
yeah.
many thoughts I have all the time, and that it's still like an ongoing process that I'm working on.
Yeah, turning them off. I think that's the turning off the internal dialogue, especially like was one of my friends used to always call it the itty bitty shitty committee. Like those like kind of like
That's
like
a great phrase.
because it is, it's kind of just like this little like voice that's just like telling you why you're not good enough. And it's like, no, 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 like just be here. If actually you were just to do it, you probably would grow. You probably would be able to like be better at it in that moment just by trusting yourself a little bit more. And so much, I was so afraid to teach yoga when I first started teaching yoga. I've been teaching for over 10 years now. And it's like, I would get caught up in my words and like I'm getting paid to do it. So I'm like, these people are probably pissed that I'm the person that's teaching. Like I would always have this like self criticism that would come to the surface. And then once I finally kind of learned, I had to like I literally do rituals before I teach every time to kind of get me into like the zone, if you will, so that I can be really present. And once I do that, then I have like these really like almost spiritual experiences with my students and they can feel it, I can feel it. And it's like all I had to do was get out of my own way. And like that, but that took a lot of practice and a lot of time to be able to achieve that for sure.
Yeah, and here I am over here just like doing yoga and being like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Oh my God, I'm doing this wrong. Everybody's looking at me.
I see that meme and it's like a person and it's like a duck and it has like a but like a million ducklings all around it and they're all like pecking at it all over and it's like me and it's like all of my thoughts as I'm doing something and it's like but that's the real like how do you turn off the voice? Like I'm just curious what has been effective for you?
I mean, I don't. I think it is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I try. Right?
I know I see this like I don't know if I can do that quite yet.
No, it's all such it's all hard work. Like
Mm-hmm.
which I appreciate, and I think, I hope it makes me better at what I at like my work as a counselor, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
just very aware of like all the shit that I'm dealing with all the time. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, even with the like the experience and the techniques and the training, but still having to like remind
Mm-hmm.
myself each week, and then having times in my life where it's like I'm able to go, oh, like I'm feeling like I can notice it when I start to get a little more abrupt in my like the way I speak to people. I'm
Mm,
like,
yeah.
okay, I got to like check in. Where's this coming from? Something's going on. And it's usually,
Hmm.
if I kind of think back, it's like I haven't been doing the things that I need to be doing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's really good. I think it's just
What do
it's a
you, oh,
process.
God. Yeah. What do you do? Like when you say like the things that you not doing things you should be doing, what are those things?
It is the that switch, that like, okay, what am I feeling, right? That processing piece, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
just being in the feelings aspect. All right, so it's trying to
Okay.
bring again that awareness, because I think it's a small step, but it is a step, right?
Hmm.
Because our
Hmm.
bodies and our minds want to automate everything, and so we
Mm-hmm.
feel, I'm driving and I'm just getting shitty because somebody, drove in front of me or braked or whatever. And then, okay, am I able to like actually process and like deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I just feel the anger and resentment and whatever, and then carry that into my next interaction, and that starts to compound? And so just trying to
Yeah.
like break those cycles, as
Hmm.
much as possible. There's going to be lots of times where I'm still, and especially the car one's a bad example because I'm just going to always get shitty, I think.
Like
But
that probably will never change, but
yeah,
working
yeah,
on it,
I'm
working on it.
don't ask my wife. She'll just say that I'm not pleasant when there's traffic. But
Who
again,
is? Who is
right,
actually?
I'm not shooting for perfection. But it's okay, what about in my next interaction? Can I then like, can that be the one that I
Mhm,
process, right? Can I just do more
mhm,
of that and less of that?
mhm. Yeah. And can you almost allow whatever has occurred before to dissolve so that it doesn't carry over? I think that that's like a lesson all in its own too, to be able to not, and that could be like in an interaction or multiple interactions throughout your day, or even from one situation that resembles another situation, to not assume that it's gonna have the same result even.
That's something that I am good at. That
Mhm.
I can compartmentalize really well, and then I can kind of, I would say I'm not as good at the kind of front end being aware as I'd like to be. But then usually after the feeling part, the post feeling processing aspect is something that I do have like as a routine. Like, so when I do
Yeah.
have these feelings, I'm usually pretty good at having that inner kind of awareness and dialogue to like go through and re
Like,
rethink through like what happened, right? Whether it's an interaction
mm,
with a coworker or a
mhm.
student or just something in my life. And then I can kind of like go through the steps, understand what it was that I felt, where it came from, and then kind of like put that away now. Okay, I understood that. That's something
Mhm.
that I usually am pretty good at.
Yeah. Is that something that you learned over time? Is that something that you learned through like school, or is that something, a
That
practice that you've picked up along the way?
that was counseling work. That was
Mhm.
grad school, and then doing individual counseling as well, like as a client, and just
Mhm.
continuing to utilize those things. Um, and I think what we were talking about earlier, like once you've done it once, you can do it twice. That just like it was
Yeah.
easier for me to do that than some of the other things that I'm kind of still having to work on.
Yeah. That's one thing that I'm really, so I got my undergrad in counseling and did a lot of like kind of like advocacy work, but more for like really heavy like suicide, depression,
Mhm.
sexual assault, domestic those kinds of like really kind of more hardcore trauma situations. And to be able to hold space for someone within that, but also for it to be productive, I felt like I needed to be able to like have a system in place for me to be able to support people through that, not to just like kind of ruminate in a way, which can be really easy to do. But through that process, I feel like I've now can really look at something and really almost objectively, sometimes too objectively, be able to pull out the nuggets of truth and be like, okay, this is how I'm working through this. This is how I'm overcoming this. And then this is what I need to just like let go of. And I think that's a harder part for me, is to not feel guilty or like not carry it into the future, because I tend to be really hard on myself in general. I just know that that's something that I've struggled with for years.
Yeah. Yeah, that holding that space for somebody else is such a great skill to be able to develop. Because as you
Mm-hmm.
said, I do think that being able to, because that really is in some ways like attached to the mindfulness of like, okay, I'm just going to be here in this and
Yeah.
listen to what I'm hearing and try to feel what this other person's feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of think about it that way. Um, which is great, right? I think then you really are very present. And then that skill just, you can kind of take that and apply it to different parts of your life too.
Yeah. And to be present for your, or at least for my, like to be present for myself, to be able to allow the emotions to come up to the surface, to be able to be non-judgmental, and then to be able to, move through them in a very compassionate way. And it's just hard. This whole life thing is not, it's not easy for anybody.
It's really hard. It's really hard to be a person. Yeah,
Seriously.
I don't know any other way to say it.
I know. One, if to have a community around you, and I think is key. To be able to have those people that are like in your corner. And you have an amazing wife, and she's also a counselor. What does she do for her profession?
She's a high school teacher. So she's
Oh, cool.
teaching ninth grade English and 11th grade AP English.
Nice. Was it been fun to be able to like kind of both be in the school setting? Are you in the same school?
Yep, we're in the same school. It is. I enjoy it. I think, when you move countries and then you're a part of, like, when you're working at a school, like an international school, and you've moved to a new
Mhm.
city, a new country, um, I think the word community takes on a different feel,
Mm,
than like
mhm.
when you are just working at a school in the place that you live.
Yeah, I can see
Because
that.
these people, that we work with take on more of a meaning. They really become family. They become your community. They
Mm,
become the people that you spend time with. And then at the center of it is this work that we're all doing, working in education. And
yeah.
so there's that commonality. And so it's a fun experience. It's sometimes a lot. It can
Mhm.
sometimes,
Kind of
feel,
mesh.
well, everybody knows everything about one another, right? Because everybody
Yeah,
who's to school also, they go out together and they go do events together, and they know each other's kids, and they know each other's friends, and they know each other's business, and
yeah,
so there is that side of it as well. But it's I don't know, I enjoy it.
yeah. I think that there's a lot of playfulness with it because, hold on one second. So have you, so I love that you're building a community, but it sounds like you're a little immersed in one another's lives. Have you found that in every place that you've been to, or has this been kind of a unique experience that you've been here for a little bit longer?
No, no. So it was the same thing in Saudi. Probably
Hmm.
even to a greater extent, just because
Hmm.
we all lived on a compound that was attached to the school. So,
Oh, okay.
and I think there it was just, um, the rest of the city was, I think, a little less accessible, to foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know if less accessible is the right word, but less inviting probably, to a
Mm-hmm.
city like Seoul. And then, here we live in pretty much the same area, but not like all on one compound.
Got
And
it.
then there's also, I think, it's easier, or easier for me at least, to
Hmm.
do things within the city and to find communities that are outside of the school as well. And
Yeah,
so it's a little bit different, but still the same kind of vibe. The people that you work with are a big part of the experience here.
yeah. Which is really nice. I think there's the commonality, similar value system for just like having a passion for education, but then the commonality of are a lot of people from like the States or different countries, or like of you, or is it people that are local?
It's a mix. I think
Hmm.
there are a lot of Americans, but Canadians and Brits and Koreans and Chinese, and people from a lot of different places, that have kind of found
Yeah.
their way here, which is fun, right? I do think that's part of that, like getting to hear people's different perspectives, and
Yeah.
experiences, and just, yeah, understand more about people and where they come from, I think is always beneficial.
Yeah. Well, and I love the appeal. It seems like that's almost the appeal of it for you, is to be able to be in these places where you are engaging with people that come from all different walks of life. And it's like there's like, do I dare say it, like there's like something exciting about it to be able to like just hear different people's like stories and where they come from and their own cultural beliefs and everything in between.
It's such an amazing experience in that way, because every new place we go, and even within a new place, I mean, each new year
Mhm.
there's new people who are showing up.
Yeah.
And you never know, like, is this person going to be a really important person in my life?
Mm.
There's obviously a cost to that, because for every new person who's coming in, and for every new place we go, there's people leaving and places that you say goodbye to. And so that
Mm.
part can be challenging. But again, I think with anything in life, there's going to be trade-offs. And so,
Yeah.
and it's one that I'm happy to make that trade.
Yeah. Would you say that's one of the bigger challenges of traveling and kind of just having this, like, almost like, do I say like not like I was gonna say transient, but that just seems to have a negative connotation in my mind. But like this lifestyle of kind of moving and being in different places and like not having as much continuity than you would be, and if you were to come back home or somewhere that feels more familiar.
It is. It's a huge challenge, and every you know, when you move, it's really hard to say goodbye, but when other people move, and I think
Mhm.
it teaches you a lot about relationships. And one of the things of learning that, you know, the relationships that we have are sometimes, and I probably most of the time, the most important when you're in them,
Mhm.
but that they won't be at some other point, right? Especially as you
Yeah.
move and say goodbye to people, and being okay with that. Like
Yeah.
relationships, you know, the important relationships, you know, those ones that stay with you for your entire life, they grow with you, you and that
Mm.
person, you grow and you have shared memories. But there's a lot of
Yeah.
relationships that I've had that were amazing, and then
Mhm.
that's kind of it. Like, you know, maybe I'll
Mhm.
see them again, but you know, there's a good chance I won't, and that's okay. They were really, really important to my experience and journey, and they're lovely memories. But
Yeah.
not like finding a way to look at that in a really positive way versus having resentment of them not being that way now, right?
Yeah. Almost
And
like
that's
recognizing the value of what they were in your life at that time versus
mhm.
trying to force them to be something more than that necessarily, right? Like life does go on, even, and it doesn't discredit who they were or what contributions they made.
No, and realizing that a lot of relationships form out of convenience, right? It's where
Mm-hmm.
we work, it's
Mm-hmm.
where we live, it's the activities that we do, and not being resentful of that fact. Like that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's given me a greater appreciation for the relationships that have stayed with me through these different transitions, both in my own life and their lives. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because I see how much work it takes when a relationship isn't
Yeah.
convenient. Um,
Truly. Mm-hmm.
so the friends that I have that when I think back to like my time in Saudi, you know, there's two people in particular that, you know, I'm regularly in contact with, and I know the work that I put into that, and then I can see it reciprocated as well, which
Mm-hmm.
then makes them even more important because just seeing the difference in various relationships I've had with people.
Yeah. Well, and I think then there's certain people that make such that everyone's gonna make an impact. I was talking to one of my best friends on here about just friendship and in general. And one thing I laughed at, I was like, but some of my favorite people in life have been people I've met for a day. And like, I've literally, like, especially like traveling, I went on a solo trip and I met this really awesome girl. And she was the first night going out in Miami. It was I was there by myself, so I didn't know anyone. And we ended up just like syncing up and like being able to be kind of like buddies with each other all night and just had an absolute blast. And I stay in touch with her and on social media and different things. And so we'll kind of touch base here and there. But like I truly believe she was meant to be in my life for that period of time. And like we do stay in touch, but it's like, do I necessarily feel like I need to like go see her more? It's like those things, it's like it's everything, just trusting the greater plan at play, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And giving up this idea that we have all of this control, right? There's just so many things that
Mm,
are happening. There's just infinite things that are
yeah.
happening that we can do absolutely nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
And just being okay with that. Like it is what it is. And I think in some ways that can narrow your own focus just to what you can control.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm getting a real dose of that lesson recently. And I'm just trying to lean in because there's so much of life is out of our control. And I think the more that you accept that and almost can appreciate it, like it's almost a blessing that you are not solely in control, like that there is a greater plan, then it's like lean back a little bit, like allow, because it's all panning out the way it's supposed to, or at least that's what I always try to trust. That's why I'm always reminding myself, trust in the process, Bear. Trust in this. It's all
Yeah.
good. It's all good.
Yeah, right. It's, you know, I think different people have different words for it, right? Like, you know, for some people it's faith, for some it's
Yeah.
trust, for you know, it looks different, but I think it's just an acceptance of our own limitations.
Yeah, I know. And where we are at every point in time, because what that is going to look like and what that's going to feel like is going to change constantly. And there's like, and getting attached to some way that it's supposed to be, I think is almost a hindrance to us to really appreciate what's actually going on right in front of us.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I know. When do you feel like, is there like a point in time where you feel the most at ease, or like kind of just like in sync with like who you are, and kind of like what brings you the most joy? Actually, that's a better question. What brings you the most joy right now?
What brings me the
Do you have
most?
Justin Bieber on your shirt? Hold on a second. Do you have
Oh,
Justin Bieber?
this is, wait a minute, hold on.
Oh my gosh. That is
I,
something else. That's classic right there.
I love this shirt. This shirt brings me a lot of joy. Justin Bieber brings me a lot of joy. Uh,
Sorry, I didn't mean to go to off the track there. I like you lean back. It's like it's just a mirror. I didn't know what it was. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, that's awesome.
Phoebe got this from a thrift shop in Sydney for me a couple of
Oh.
summers ago for like $10. This is the best value shirt I own, 100.
You're like, I've gotten full use out of this multiple
I wear
times.
this shirt way too often, I'm sure, for a 38-year-old man.
Oh, it's a great photo too. Look, it's very artistic. It looks very artistic. I like it. I have a
Yeah.
lot of random graphic too, so yes, don't even worry. I know. But yeah, so what's bringing joy into your life right now? What's bringing kind of that flow? Like what? How do you kind of embody that in your daily life?
God. Hmm. That's a tough question. I don't I don't think my goal is joy, right? Like, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's like there are lots of things that bring me joy. There's lots of things that bring me happiness. But I don't think that's usually what I'm like looking for. I don't
Striving
think
for.
that's
Mm-hmm.
the goal. I think the work that I do at school is really important to me. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily joy because it brings me a lot of stress and anxiety and all that. But I think that it brings me a lot of purpose and kind of
Mm-hmm.
self-fulfillment in that way.
Yeah.
But I think I'm probably I guess balance is probably what the goal is, right? I think it's some combination of, do I feel like my life has purpose in the difference I'm able to
Mm,
make, and
yeah.
hopefully that's more positive than negative. Am I doing a good job as a husband and a friend? Am I finding time
Mm,
for those things? And then am I also prioritizing myself as well, which is, it's always kind of a fine balance.
yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty self-aware about, the things, my kind of instincts and what I need versus what's good for me, right? Those things are not always in line.
Yeah.
Um, and so trying to find that balance of like, okay, am I being a good friend and putting those time into the relationships? And then the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
with my wife. And then am I feeling like I'm doing a good work as a counselor? And
Mm-hmm.
then am I finding kind of things for myself as well, which is sometimes as little as like having a day off, reading a book, taking naps,
Mm-hmm.
those sort of
Mm-hmm.
things. And trying to like not overdo it on any one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not let myself go too far in a social direction, or too far in putting my head down and just working, or too far in a very selfish way where I'm only looking out for the things that I want. And
Yeah.
like, again, like understanding the kind of push and pull of all of that, I think that's probably what the goal is.
Mm-hmm.
And when I
Mm-hmm.
probably feel like I'm doing the best version of myself.
Yeah. Finding that moderation within it all, to be able to live. I once heard there's like, you know, there's like it's like a piece of a pie, but then one person was like, you're always juggling multiple things. Like life is juggling. And so like being able, and it's not necessarily about holding on to one thing for too long, but it's actually keeping the flow of them moving throughout your life. And I think
Hmm.
that that's going to change depending on what environment you're in, how much energy you have, all of that. I think the pace of life can shift a lot, and being self-aware enough to be able to like kind of adjust as necessary is definitely, I think, a goal for all of us to be able to strive for.
Yeah, I like the visual aspect of the juggler, because I think it's really easy in any part of our life to get tunnel vision about one thing. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that can become all encompassing, and then it takes on more importance than the other things in our life when it doesn't have to, right? And trying to, again,
Yeah.
keep in mind the different pieces of someone's life, and
Mhm.
understanding that, okay, this is maybe not going so well, but this over here is, and this is going fine. And then just kind of those recalibrations. Again, it's just that check-in, right? Of like, what is happening and what am I feeling?
Mhm.
And then what decision do I want to make?
Yeah. How do I need to evaluate? How do I need to move forward in a more balanced and hopefully connected way, a more centered way? I always know that's like number one for me. Like I need to feel connected to my intuition. I need to feel at ease to a certain extent. I like to feel at ease. And if I don't feel at ease, then I know there's something is off for me. And if that's within my relationships or within my work-life balance, whatever it is, like I tend to hyper focus really easy. And so it's like something that I've learned over the years is to like not lean too heavily in one area, because that's when we get off kilter and usually when something falls to the wayside. So it's hard to do though, because it's constantly changing. It's not like thing that's constantly like moving, and like the barometer is constantly, they're like the what I'm trying to think of, the pinpoints or like the target's constantly moving. So it's hard to know where it's gonna land.
Well, and then it all comes down to what you were saying earlier about, then you do have to trust that it's going to work out in some way, or that it's going to be okay, or that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you keep making more decisions, and hopefully
Yeah.
feel good about those.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for joining me. I
Yeah,
really
it's super
sincerely
fun.
enjoyed it. I know. I'm so happy we got to like just chat, and also just like to hear kind of what's been going on in your life and all the things that have kind of come to fruition for you. It's pretty incredible. I hope that you recognize that just like from the
Oh my,
outside looking in.
I'm so grateful for how things have worked out. And when I look back at it, I just think about so many times where it could have gone terribly wrong. And
Mm,
yeah, again, that groundedness of like appreciating those things for do help when you're having, when I'm having a bad day or a bad moment. But
yeah.
yeah, I appreciate coming on here. It's, what's fun is that, you watch people from afar through social media. But I would
Mhm.
say that you like this conversation feels very much like I would have expected, from your social media. So like I don't feel like there's
Oh,
like a
good.
version of yourself that you're just putting online. It feels like you're living a very authentic life. So
Thank you. I am truly trying my best. It's, I have good moments and bad moments, but I'm the more real and honest I am with who I am, the more I'm able to connect with people in a more genuine way. And if that's on here or just like in life, and I think it's like giving faith to other people that people are normal, like there's like people do
it
have good
takes
intentions.
it also takes less work to show up that way, right? To
100%.
be authentic and vulnerable. It's just scarier, right?
Yeah.
It's not as like you're not wearing all this armor and holding up these walls, which take a lot of kind of emotional energy. It's just scary as
Mhm.
shit.
Yeah. Well, because then you don't really know how people are good. Like what I had to get over, especially within these last few years, was like getting over the idea of like, I can't control how someone else is going to perceive me. So, like, I'm just going to let go of that. And if I'm myself, then if they like me or don't like me, it's not really within my control, but at least I know I'm being me and like I like who I am. So if they like me too, then like, great. If not, all right, well,
Yeah.
see you later. I know. Do you want to
Hey,
say hi, Bells? Just hanging out. Hey, Bells, you want to come say hi? I
Isabella,
love you.
you being authentic too?
Oh man, she is the most authentic. That's
Yeah,
the beauty of like kids,
being
is
that
that they
young.
have no filter. Yeah, like she doesn't even know to like even put on a filter in any way.
She's
She's
like, nope.
she's like, I don't know. She is very shy though. She doesn't necessarily always love being around new people, and so that's been something as she's gotten older, just for especially with both of her parents being kind of more outgoing people, to like
Yeah.
for us to be okay with her being shy and not to force her into anything. And she has a very discerning eye though. If she does not like someone, she literally, when she was younger, whispering because I don't want her to hear me talking about this. When she was younger, someone came up to her, she didn't want to talk to them. She literally put her hand in their face and she would say, "No, don't talk to me." And like with blank face, like, do not speak to me. And I was like, okay, so we're gonna have to work on that because that might be a little offensive for some people. But so I appreciate her honesty, and she has been that way through and through.
Oh,
And
you're
I wouldn't
about to
want you to be
get
any other way. I
you're gonna
know.
get a
I can.
heavy dose of how little you can control as she starts to get older.
I know. I know it full fact, and I feel like it's karma because I was like the easiest kid, but then I was a little bit of a hellion as a teenager. So we're gonna please God. No, I'm joking.
I
All
like that
right.
she's over there making faces at me.
She knows mom well, and especially with like women real estate and all this stuff, I do a lot of Zoom calls, so that's always her favorite time to pop in and say hello, which I don't mind. It's kind of, it is what it is. But anyhow, sorry, we got off a little off topic, but I appreciate
Okay.
your time and just being here. And yeah, I'm so excited to continue to kind of watch from afar and just to continue to see you blossom, bloom, bloom, boom, boom.
Well, I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. And if people wanted to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
God, anywhere they can find me, Instagram, and Instagram is probably where I'm most available.
Okay. And your handle is?
At Ronnie Travels.
There you go. Because Ronnie does travel. And thank you for listening in. Thanks for being a part of this conversation. And yeah, if you want to connect at Ferracino on Instagram, or you can check out my website, Coaching with Fer. We'll hopefully see you next week. See you later.